What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 292 of the A2D From Addict to Disciple podcast. I want to give a big welcome to our new listeners from Barbados. That brings our total up to 79 countries. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, and share with your friends whatever country they live in. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. Again, today's episode is number 292 of the A2D From Addict to Disciple podcast, and it's entitled Feeding the Squatter. And I want to give us a citation right at the beginning. I got the idea for this after talking to some people and Googling, and I found an article called Manage Your Mind, Are You Feeding the Squatter? By Linda Holt on www.bravescene.com. So if you'd like to get her take on this, you can find that online. But first, let's define what a squatter is. A squatter is a person who settles in or occupies a property without legal permission. They have no real claim to the property, but in most cases, they found it abandoned or unoccupied, and so they moved in. They began to squat, and as they began to squat, they got a right to stay there. And for this episode, we're going to be looking at squatters in our brain. And Linda Holt says these squatters are our own self-talk. So you got that. As we start off today, I want you to think of those things you tell yourself. What is your self-talk, and what sort of negative self-talk has really taken up squatters' rights inside your brain? And where does it all come from anyway? Well, I'd like to start by looking at some of the things that add into our self-talk. And in the beginning, I want to say often our self-talk is skewed by guilt and shame. It's made distorted in a way that's sort of inaccurate or unfair or misleading because it's this negative self-talk that's fueled by guilt and shame. And I say it can be inaccurate because it's our recollection. It's the way we remember things happen. And that's not the whole picture. So it could be skewed by that inaccuracy in that you're only viewing it from one side. It's unfair to yourself because you haven't forgiven yourself. And it's also unfair to the people that you're having these memories about because you haven't forgiven them and how they handled their safety and the things they needed to do in their safety from your addiction. So you haven't sort of looked at their side of things. And this information in your brain, this self-talk, can be misleading because often it's focused on the past, on retaining what we lost or regaining what we lost. And it's not really about looking forward. I'd like to sum this intro up with a quote by Louis B. Smedes, an American author, who said, "Don't do it quickly, but don't wait too long. If we wait too long to forgive, our rage settles in and claims squatter's rights to your soul." You got that? So whether we need to forgive ourselves or forgive others and their thoughts that we carry about them in our own self-talk, you don't want to rush in and do it quickly, but don't wait too long. Because if you wait too long, rage actually settles into your mind, settles into your brain as a squatter, and then begins to claim squatters' rights on our very souls. Wow, that's deep. And another aspect of these self-talk ideas and thoughts that become squatters is these thoughts become constant. And I find that they're ones that just keep popping up, and they don't have to be there 24/7, but they're there anytime they want to be. And it's often driven by a lack of acceptance of what you cannot change. If you're not at a point where you've accepted the things that you cannot change, then this negative self-talk becomes a constant squatter in your brain and can really taint or cloud how you feel about life, how you feel about any friendships, how you feel about recovery, all because these squatters, as our previous quote said, are sort of trying to take over your soul. And these thoughts are also unnecessary distractions from what you can change. If we focus too much on this negative self-talk as the squatter, and we really don't have to know we're focusing on it because it's taking over, it's a distraction from what we can change. And this dilemma settles in because we're justifying this negative self-talk by the perception that those people who left us have the life that we want. Those people that kicked us to the curb have the life that we want. And so it distracts us from being able to dig into the things that we need to do to get the life that's right in front of us. And I think there's a great anonymous quote for this, and it says, "Starve your distractions, feed your focus." And with the key of the squatter's rights, we have to starve those squatters and feed the positive things that we should be focusing on, the things that we can change, the things that are within our control, and our new life in recovery. Another aspect to think about is that these thoughts are negative and can turn to rage, which devours us through self-sabotage. So let's go back to the definition. I'm sort of rewriting the definition here from what we're talking about. A squatter is a thought that settles in or occupies space in your brain, and you've given sort of tacit permission, silent permission, by abandoning your hope for a new life and new dreams. You see the self-sabotage there. We give permission to these squatter thoughts by abandoning our hope for our own future. So the squatter is your negative self-talk, your blame shifting, your failure to accept your consequences of your addictive lifestyle. And remember, what you feed grows. And in this case, your squatter grows like a weed to occupy all the available space inside your brain, all of your time, your waking thoughts, your sleeping thoughts. It can be nightmares in the middle of the night. It can be keeping you awake and you can't sleep because you can't shut these thoughts down. In effect, this squatter growing like a weed just continues to keep growing, and it becomes almost impossible to stay focused on positive thoughts. And Norman Nicholson, an English writer and poet, once said a quote that I think ties into this perfectly. He said, "Weeds don't need planting in well-drained soil. They don't ask for fertilizer or bits of rag to scare away the birds. They come without invitation, and they don't take the hint when you want them to go. Weeds are nobody's guests, more like squatters." Let me break that apart. Weeds don't need planting in well-drained soil. When we grab a hold of one of these negative thoughts and it becomes a squatter like a weed in our brain, it doesn't need to be watered. It doesn't need well-drained soil. It doesn't need fertilizer. It just keeps growing. And it comes without invitation. We might have just lingered on a negative thought. We didn't want it to take over. But like weeds, it spreads and the roots go deep and hard to pull out. And they're not your guests. They are squatters. So how do we kick out the squatter? How do we say, "I'm done feeding this squatter"? I understand, David, what you're saying about feeding the squatter, and I'm guilty, but how do I kick out the squatter? Well, if you think of ways people kick squatters out of properties, first they get an eviction notice. And so what would your eviction notice look like for the squatters in your mind? Well, write it down. Change your thinking. Come into agreement that these thoughts have no place there anymore and you want them out. And I really mean write it down in your journal like a formal eviction notice to your brain, so to speak. And then to follow up with squatters to get them out, you realize it's legal action. It's the owner of the property saying, "Hey, I still own the deed. This is my property. You can't just live there rent-free. I didn't give you this space to occupy rent-free." And we have to realize we haven't given these people space to live free in our mind, in our brain either. And we have to understand that this is legally our property. It's our head, it's our thoughts. And we're prepared to take legal action, so to speak. It's our right to take our thoughts back, to take our thoughts captive. And a good message that landlords often learn is they do not try to get rid of a squatter all by themselves. They don't want to get into an argument or a threat or a fight. So they use the system that exists. And I think what we can learn from that is if we're getting the squatters out of our mind, use your support system. Don't try to just do it alone. Don't try to say, oh, I'm strong enough to just change my thoughts. Become accountable to people and ask for their advice on how to get these squatters out. And give them permission that when you slip back to feeding the squatter, they help you repeat these steps we just went through. Well, maybe it's time for a new eviction notice. Maybe it's time to understand my legal action and stay tight with you so that I know I can't do this all by myself. As we come to the end of this episode, at the end of Linda Holt's article, she asked 2 questions, and I want to ask them of you now. She said, number 1, what regularly occupies space in your mind? And number 2, is this there you want to focus your energy? So as you reflect on this episode, answer those questions. Remember, your body becomes what you consume. Your mind becomes what you consume. Be careful what you feed both. That's an anonymous quote. Thanks for listening to this episode. And I want to ask my 2 questions. Are you still feeding your squatter? And are you ready to evict your squatter? If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can send me a message on the link in this podcast or by email at davidfroma2d.com, or go to my website, www.froma2d.org, and click on the contact page. Keep listening to future podcast episodes, and as always, stay safe and stay resilient.